Thank you, sir.
Glad having you here.
All right, very good. Thank you.
So it's raining out today.
That's good news.
Rained last night. I guess we don't have to vote for Proposition 6.
Well,
crisis over.
That would be nice if that was the end result, but unfortunately our reservoirs were only 60% capacity as of last week. We have a real crisis. We need more water resources, and Proposition 6 is just a small portion of a bigger plan that needs to be fulfilled for our state.
And you've already voted.
I have.
And you voted yes.
I did.
And you recommend that everybody else vote.
I do, and the big issue was, how's the rainy day fund going to be used? That's what conservatives were worried about.
The ironically named rainy day fund.
And what a great resource to have. But I think people were frustrated because earlier in the session, the rainy day fund, the Senate voted to drain that fund. Patrick and Dewhurst both
well, $6 billion. Not totally drain it.
Well, what was the balance when they made that vote?
Well, we assumed the balance would have been somewhere.
It was $6 billion. Yeah. That's what it was, and that's what the frustration was. So people want long-term planning. They don't want people to run in and use the rainy day fund as a slush fund, and that's a very important concept that people are very focused on right now.
So the worst drought ever, one-year drought in the history of the state, does not qualify as a one-time challenge to be addressed in part by using rainy day funds, which are, of course, supposed to be one-time use.
Well, and we have been in an ongoing drought, a very serious, prolonged drought since 2005. We've had a couple of years where we've had some breaks, but this is a ongoing problem that we're having. And I think they want the state government to be doing this as part of general revenue and long-range planning, and making certain that our water planning process is really focused on the need.
Now, that is a criticism you've heard of the legislature, both on water and transportation. They should have found the money in the general revenue, not made this a withdrawal for the rainy day fund that required both a 2/3 vote of the House and Senate, and also kicking it to the voters, who, after all, could decide not to support it on this election day and next. If you were Lieutenant Governor Staples during this session, would you have guided the Senate to a different outcome on that?
You would have had to start before this last session. You would have had to start several sessions ago, recognizing that our state's population is growing, recognizing that our water supply per capita is going back down to where it was in the 1950s before we started building reservoirs. So this is an issue that we really need to be focused on session after session, making it a priority, and recognizing that no one gets a water bill from the state of Texas.
They all get it from local.
That's exactly right. Now, the state has a role. It's in planning, it's in research, making low-cost financing options available, looking at our state water plan and ensuring that that system is really working. And it's really not today, because it's a Christmas list of every project that regions can think of. That needs to be revised to make certain that they're also proposing a mechanism to pay for those plans. Because ultimately the water users in the local areas are the ones that are benefiting. They need to be finding a mechanism to pay for those instead of just asking for those projects.
Let me go up from water to the general question of this race. Why this job? Why you? And why now?
I believe that Texas is in a state of transition. We're growing rapidly. We are a state that has many needs today. We're very proud of where we are in regard to the growth that we've had. But the growth that we've had in Texas is not because of anyone in Austin. It's because of hardworking men and women around our state. I'm running for lieutenant governor because I don't want the Texas of tomorrow to look like California or Illinois of today. We have states that have abandoned their emphasis on our free market enterprise system, on individual responsibility. I've been a consistent conservative leader in both chambers of the legislature, and I think the taxpayers of Texas want someone that is focused on delivering services at lower cost, and I have that best record of doing so.
You're a young guy. You could hang around, let Governor Dewhurst have another.
Say that one more time.
You're a young guy. You could hang around patiently for 4 more years. You could decide to let Governor Dewhurst or somebody else serve, and there's plenty of time for you to run again. You're doing something that has been not unique but rare over at least the last 20 years in Texas, and that is you are challenging a sitting incumbent who you endorsed in a Senate race against Ted Cruz a year ago. Why not give the guy a break? What has he done in the last year that's caused you to go from endorsing him to deciding he not only needs to be defeated, but you're the one who needs to defeat him?
Well, and to be clear, all the candidates in this race had endorsed.
Yes, but you're the one I'm talking to now. I want to know why you're the one who endorsed
him. And I'm happy to discuss that, but for the record, we wanted to establish that.
Everybody endorsed Governor Dewhurst, stipulated, fine. So why did you endorse him?
And one candidate actually attacked Ted Cruz, Governor Dewhurst's opponent in that race, on his radio program and ambushed him, and we'll get a chance to talk about that. Here's the situation today.
Yes.
David Dewhurst is a nice guy.
Yeah.
But in the race that he lost to Ted Cruz, it became clear that he is not the strong leader to carry our state forward.
This was a surprise to you?
He performed so poorly in that race that he did not articulate a vision for our state. This race is about the future. This race is about, as our state grows, how are we going to manage the business of state government? And David Dewhurst failed in that contest and ably demonstrating that. This last session is an example of failed leadership, I believe, where he did not provide the leadership that our state needs. Republican primary voters are very concerned that he made the most liberal state senator in Texas and provided her a national following that is going to be a gateway to bring in liberal interest in this Texas that want to unwind the progress that we've made. Those are very real issues.
You put the creation of Wendy Davis celebrity on Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst.
How can you do it any other way? When any person that's involved in this process recognizes when you go to the last day, you have a filibuster that the senators wanted to honor that process.
Right.
That is the inevitable outcome, and that is very clear. And during the regular legislative session, if you're the leader of the Senate, when that bill is on the floor, you do not go out to drinks with your political consultant while the legislature is in session and taking that up. Now, everyday Texans on the job that leave their post during critical moments lose their job. Those are realities that we live with, and we need to make a change.
Mechanically, Commissioner, could the abortion bill have passed at a regular session with the 2/3 rule?
If you get the votes, you certainly can.
Were the votes there? 19 plus Lucio equals 20. I don't like to do math, but I know 20 is not 21.
Well, if someone's gone, you certainly can do that.
You wait for somebody to go to the bathroom?
Look, you use the tools of the Senate as a way to accomplish objectives. You don't use it as a manner to give excuses.
Isn't that what Senator Davis did? Exactly what you just said? Use the tools of the Senate to accomplish an objective?
She did. And
you begrudge her that?
No, I begrudge David Dewhurst for giving her that platform when we knew this was the inevitable outcome.
Would you have busted her earlier in the day?
I would have adjourned the Senate, went back the next day. We know
you would have adjourned the Senate with the knowledge that she intended to filibuster, and then you would have come back into a second special.
I would have been working before that to not let it get to that
point. But I'm
point.
asking you on that day.
And I'm telling you, had it happened like that, that's the way I would have
Because Senator Patrick, your pal in this race,
I thought you were interviewing me.
But Senator Patrick has said before you, in your presence, that what he would have done on that day is figured out procedurally how to shut the filibuster down. I'm asking if Lieutenant Governor Staples would have
says
shut
a lot
her
of things.
But I'm asking you, would Lieutenant Governor Staples
and talking and doing are two different things.
Would you have shut her down on that day?
I would have adjourned the Senate.
Yeah,
that's what I would have done.
Do you begrudge Ted Cruz his speechifying in the United States? It seems to me that you could say that both of them actually used the procedures of their bodies to accomplish what they knew was not a winnable goal, but to make a strong political point, and both succeeded.
And I think as a member of the Senate, you should use the rules to accomplish your agenda. And that means for conservatives and liberals both. Right. As a leader of the Senate, you have to have leadership. And that's really what this race is about. It's about leadership and it's about results. I've done that as a member of the House, as a member of the Senate, and now as Commissioner of Agriculture. Yeah. Texans, as I've traveled around this state, have been very concerned about the growth in our population, what our tax structure is going to be, what the expenses of government is going to be. Yeah. As Commissioner of Agriculture, I have cut waste, I've brought efficiencies, I've delivered services at lower cost with fewer number of employees. I've worked with the legislature to abolish agencies. That's what they're expecting is leadership, not just talking, but actually doing.
So let me come back, though, to the 2/3 rule, since we're talking about the issue of the regular session versus the special. In a Senate led by Lieutenant Governor Staples, will there be a 2/3 rule in effect?
I've said that we can lower that to a threshold around the 60% rule. I've said that several years ago. I said we can eliminate the 2/3 rule on those issues that we know are bottlenecks, that are just partisan issues, that you have parties voting in block. And I'm happy to work with the senators to do that. My vision for being Lieutenant Governor of Texas is to sit before the taxpayers, before the session, after the session, and to arrive and not give excuses. They want things done. We have a transportation system that has been focused on tolling and bonding for the last decade. They want to get back to a pay-as-you-go system. They want our education needs met, and that's what they expect in leadership.
But I want to come to transportation next, actually, and I appreciate you bringing that up. But I've got to ask you, it sounds like that under the Staples regime in the Senate, it would be the 2/3 rule when I feel like it, which is not really the tradition of the Senate over time. To say that I would use the 2/3 rule except in cases where it's inconvenient on issues that I care about doesn't really seem very sporting of you.
This is about getting the people's work done. It's not about allowing people to take over the process and shut it down.
So why not get rid of the 2/3 rule altogether?
Did you hear what I said when I
Well,
started? I would
did.
be willing to eliminate that threshold to the 60% rule.
Right.
I mean, this is a senator's decision. As lieutenant governor, I'm going to be the leader that is focused on the outcomes of what we want at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be making certain that we're getting that.
What about, well, since we're staying in procedure, let me just ask then, the Democratic chairs question. This is another thing that has come up in this race.
Sure.
Senator Patrick busted Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst's chops over the fact that he had appointed Democratic chairs. Will you appoint Democrats to chair committees if you're elected Lieutenant Governor?
I will not appoint on a proration basis based on the composition of the Senate. I'm going to be working with the members, and I will be appointing members to chair the committees based on getting what I see as the vision for Texas accomplished. And I'll be making the appointments based on that.
So is it possible you would appoint none?
It's possible.
Yeah? It's possible you would appoint no Democrats, just being clear about that.
Yeah, being clear, I'm going to go in with no preconceived notion about making certain we have a certain number from each party.
Right.
I'm going to be going in, appointing committee chairs that are going to help me get my conservative vision for Texas passed.
Right.
We don't know what the composition of the Senate's going to be. We have to
there'll
wait
be
and make
some.
certain.
There'll be some Democrats.
Certainly there will be,
Yeah.
and I'll be looking at who they are, where their strengths are,
Right.
what their passions are, and do they align with keeping our taxes low, keeping our regulations fair, having a fair court system, and making certain that we can be welcoming when it comes to bringing jobs and expanding opportunities in our state. That's the way I'll be doing it.
When Senator Patrick was here 6 weeks ago, I asked him a version of this question about the Democratic chairs conundrum, and he gave an answer not unlike yours. I'm not going to appoint as many as he did. I may appoint 0. I might appoint some. We'll have to sort of see how it goes. And I asked him something that I want to ask you. Are you planning to be lieutenant governor for only the Republicans of this state, or are you trying to be lieutenant governor for everybody? Because if you say we're not going to have Democratic chairs, which is absolutely atypical in the history of the Senate, you talk about your conservative vision. It's a conservative state, stipulated, absolutely. Will you reach out to Democrats in a meaningful way that leads them to believe that you're also their lieutenant governor?
Evan, in any office I've ever served in, I've served everyone that's elected me to that office. All the people of Texas, even the ones that didn't vote for me.
Yeah.
I'm going in and running for lieutenant governor because we need leadership in this state to solve problems.
Yeah.
I've done that time and again in every capacity. I have, when people reach out to me on the Texas-Mexico border, I didn't ask if they were Republican or Democrat.
Right.
They were Texans who were suffering at the hands of drug cartels or chasing them off their property.
Right.
That's why I got involved in that process. That's the way I want to serve as lieutenant governor, as being a problem solver,
Right.
but never compromising my conservative values,
Right.
but focused on common sense solutions. That's what people expect.
On the conservative question, you mentioned that Lieutenant Governor Dewhurst demonstrated failed leadership during the session. One of the issues in the Cruz race, which you've also referenced, is that Ted Cruz said straight away David Dewhurst is not sufficiently or authentically conservative. Do you agree?
I think David's philosophy in problem solving is really just to throw money at it. I mean, he thinks that by appropriating a few $100 more billion or $1 million that you can solve a problem. Mine is how can you go in and have efficiencies? How can you make the system work more effectively? And that's what Texas needs in a lieutenant governor, someone that's focused on the fundamentals, that understands the process has to work after the legislature goes home. And I want the legislature to go home. When I served in the House, we did not have any special sessions. I'd like us to go back to that again. Right. We've been in a system where we have special sessions. We need to do our business during the regular session, go home, live under the laws that we passed, come back, and 2 years later.
So by saying you believe that the lieutenant governor's solution to problems is to throw money at it, I take it you have an issue with the size of the state budget.
You know, I think budgets can always be looked at for ways to make them smaller. Yeah. I think Nancy Pelosi is doing a disservice to all Americans during the debate in Washington today and saying that the cupboard is bare, we've done everything we can do. As Commissioner of Agriculture, keep in mind I followed 8 years of Susan Combs, 8 years of Rick Perry, and yet I have found ways to make the department and the agency more efficient.
Yep.
That's the expectation that Texas taxpayers have. Not someone that just talks a good game, but someone that actually delivers that. And I've done that as Commissioner of Agriculture, and that's what I'm going to do as Lieutenant Governor.
Senator Patrick was famously a no vote, and controversially, a no vote on the budget. Would you have been a no vote on the budget if you had been in the Senate?
I'm not going to go back and revisit
Why not?
every vote, because this is about
Just
the future.
revisit that vote.
Look, Patrick says a lot of things, but he doesn't deliver.
But in that case, he both said he voted against it, and there's proof he did.
And he voted for it all the way through the process to the very last time.
I'm trying to
People
understand.
of Texas don't want gaming. They don't want radio talk show solutions. They want real Texans that are working. Look, Patrick has, and Jerry and David all have different features, all have different ideas.
You won't say whether you would have voted for the budget?
I'm saying that as Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to be going into the process, finding efficiencies like I did when I served on Senate Finance. The agencies that I looked at, I was always scrubbing those agencies, looking for ways to find savings. That's the type of Lieutenant Governor I'm going to be.
You don't like Dan Patrick, do you?
Look, this isn't about liking someone or disliking someone.
Well, I didn't say it was about it. I'm observing that you seem, of the three of them, to really not like him very much.
When we started this, you started asking me about me, and I brought up everyone else. Then all your questions have been prefaced with Dan Patrick.
Well, not all of them, but let me give you a heads up. The next question is going to be prefaced with Dan Patrick. This week, Dan Patrick has attacked you over. I want to give you a chance to respond. I think you're going to like this Dan Patrick preface question. This week, Dan Patrick has attacked you on the immigration issue in 3 different areas, not for the first time, but he's tried to knit them all together to create a theme here, that somehow you're soft on immigration. He's attacked you for supporting in-state tuition when you were in the Texas Senate. He's attacked you for supporting driver's licenses for undocumented persons when you were in the Texas Senate. And lately, he's been attacking you for supporting, quote, socialized health care for undocumented persons. You have a different point of view about these things. He's been blasting this to the world. I'd like to give you an opportunity to respond.
I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately for Texas taxpayers, Dan is a do anything, say anything politician. He talks a good game, but he doesn't have a record of delivering on anything. He's not done one thing for border security. He has not been an effective leader. On the issue of driver's license and health care, on emergency room health care, the facts are these. People that were here illegally were getting health care and driver's license before those bills were voted on. They were getting those same driver's license and health care after those bills were voted on. Dan Patrick doesn't tell the truth. His first ad in this campaign was a lie, and it's been recognized as such, and that's unfortunate for the people of Texas that you have a candidate that starts with his first campaign as a lie.
Is it correct that you voted for those bills when you were in the Senate?
What I voted for was to help lower cost because of federal mandates that allowed or forced local hospitals to take anyone that comes to the emergency room. And so that's what I think we need to do as a state, be very cautious about the way we go forward, but look for ways to solve problems. And that's what I've done. I'm the only candidate in this race that has developed a 6-point plan to reform our failed immigration system that does not include amnesty and starts with border security. The rest of them have talked about it. I cut my budget. I gave grants to the Department of Public Safety to use in Operation Drawbridge that have tangibly resulted in the apprehension of 16,000 individuals and 35 tons of narcotics. A very low-cost program with high impact and high results. That's what lieutenant governors are supposed to do.
And on the in-state tuition question, you've also said, after the Patrick ad, I actually no longer support in-state tuition for undocumented persons. Is that true?
No, that is not true, what you just said.
Well, then you tell us what is true.
You said after that ad. I said early on in this process.
Well, you responded to his charge that you did support it by saying you don't support it.
I said way before his ad ever came out, look, it's easy for the media just to categorize something. The bill that we voted on in 2001 was predicated upon students correcting their status. I said long before his ad ever came out that that bill had not been enforced. Our federal government has not done their job in securing the border. therefore it should be repealed.
Yeah.
That's the reality of what we deal with today. Texas taxpayers are so frustrated because politicians get up and talk about one thing, but they don't follow through.
Yeah.
And that's why we need to have a system that secures our border, that reforms our failed system. And I have been working at the national level in doing that. Right. I've recruited 2 retired generals to develop a strategic military assessment of the border. I've been appointed a chair of a national task force. As Lieutenant Governor, I think states have to lead once again, Evan.
Yeah.
I mean, this generation of voters today, they think that the federal government created the states. The states created the federal government. And states like Texas, who recognize that keeping taxes low and our regulations fair is the formula for success, because our citizens and our voters hold those beliefs, yeah, is the way that we're going to turn and change our nation one more time. And we need strong lieutenant governors that can do that.
So opposing in-state tuition on some of these other issues, tough on immigration, this is actually a fairly consistent theme within at least talking points of the 4 candidates. I've asked you this before, but I want to ask you again to address it and maybe a little bit more expansively. Is there a message that Latinos may be hearing different from what the Republican Party needs right now? At exactly the moment that you 4 were squabbling over in-state tuition as a consequence of the Patrick ad, Greg Abbott was asking for help from the National Republican Party for outreach to Latino voters. We know what happened in the last election cycle with regard to Latinos and Republicans. I liken this, the commentator said, you know, with Latinos and Republicans, it's like they tell you you're ugly all year long and then they ask you to the prom. Do you have a problem with the kind of messaging, the positions that you take, or the language that you use in then turning around and getting Latinos to suddenly vote Republican?
I have a problem with the media that tries to characterize our outreach the way that you just did.
Okay, tell me what's wrong with it.
But what's wrong with it is because Republicans at our very core in this great state, and all Texans, I believe, they don't care what your last name happens to be, they don't care what your zip code is, they don't care the color of your skin. They want people to perform. Latinos that are being chased off their property by drug cartels, they want that problem solved. I think all Texans, regardless of our background, we want a system where you can come into our country legally in the daylight across our bridge, not coming into our nation illegally in the middle of the night in the brush. We need a system that resolves that and corrects that. We want a system where you have a good education system, that if you work hard, you study, you're honest, the sky's the limit. That is who we are as Texans, and that's what my vision is for Texas.
And that's the case you make to the Latino community, that this is about economic opportunity, it's about freedom.
Absolutely. I have Latinos that are supporting me for Lieutenant Governor. Right. I had a fundraiser last night, or Tuesday night in Harlingen. They don't want us to fly down, go to the country club, have a fundraiser, take the money, and fly home and leave. They want us to be a part of their community and being problem solvers. Right. But we can't grow as a state if we're trying to put every sector of our population in silos. We certainly need to be sensitive, but we need a state that moves us all forward. And that's what I've done as Lieutenant Governor. That's what I will do as Lieutenant Governor. That's what I've done as a state senator, as Commissioner of Agriculture, and in the House.
You acknowledge that the Republican Party in Maine has had a challenge with the Latino community?
I acknowledge that in the past, the Democrats have done a better job in getting the vote at the end of the day. Yeah. But I also recognize this. You cannot compete for votes based on what projects you want to pay for.
Right.
You have to go out and compete for votes based on what your vision is for our state. Yeah. You want a situation that you can rise up above your upbringing and live the American dream. I grew up in East Texas. My father worked in a glass factory for 36 years in the hot end, not the cold end. When I got in from school, we had 2 choices. One is we could go to the farm and work. The other was we could stay inside and study. Education took a bigger priority in my life when those were the 2 options I was given. Right. That's the message that I think this generation needs to hear, and I'm the one that can deliver that message because I've lived it. And I've done it in a way that I've been accountable for my actions. Yep. I've represented everyone in my district, and I've done it in a way that didn't compromise who I was.
I promised you I'd come back to transportation. I want to before we get to the dynamics of this race politically. So we have this proposition on the ballot next November. I don't know what number it's going to be yet, but you're going to vote for it?
I'm going to look at what the circumstances are of the rainy day fund budget level, because forecasts sometimes are wrong. We need to see what that level is. We need to see what the health of our economy is, and I'll make a decision then.
But you could be a no vote.
I could be a no vote if the economy is doing as we expect it to be, if the rainy day fund balance is healthy as we expect it to be,
Right.
I think giving strong consideration to this makes good fiscal sense for our state.
Right.
But we need to see what the circumstances are before we decide how we're going to vote.
Now, these numbers all change, and,
Sure
and
they
the
do.
time frame will change, but it is said that water is a $53 billion, 50-year problem. It is said that transportation may be as much as a $400 billion, 20-year problem just to maintain current roads at the current level of congestion. And of course, with the population growing, the idea of current roads or current level of congestion is kind of ridiculous. This is a pittance compared to what you'd need to actually have a plan, and it's arguably 1/4 of what TxDOT has said it needs annually. So what do you do to solve this problem? It's not, you're not going to raise taxes, Commissioner. I mean,
Well said. We agree right now.
you have said you're not going to raise taxes.
Point.
So in the absence of that, where is the revenue to meet our ambitions for this fast-growing state?
They're in several areas. First of all, the first thing that you do is look for efficiencies. It's inexcusable to approach a problem without looking how government can deliver services more efficiently, more effectively at lower cost.
And you've said you think TxDOT should do what you did at the Department of
Absolutely. As Lieutenant Governor, I'm going to be calling in every executive director of the agency, like I do at the Department of Agriculture with my division heads. Yeah. We call them in, they talk with me or my senior management staff on a regular basis. I'm going to be calling in the executive directors and the Senate-confirmed volunteer commissioners that serve. And we're going to be asking two questions. Is what you're doing a legitimate state function? And if it is, how can you deliver those services more efficiently and more effectively?
Right.
We're going to do that all throughout state government. So that's the first approach that you take. The second approach that you take is looking at technologies that you can use to deliver those services. We have inspectors in my agency, and we found some tremendous savings just by using technology to make those routes, and we're going to do that. I think also we need to look at a funding source. We pay a sales tax on motor vehicles. We drive those motor vehicles on the road. We need to be looking at dedicating that motor vehicle sales tax or a portion of that toward our transportation funding. We know that our economy
You're talking about ending the diversion.
That's exactly right.
And you're talking about the diversion to education specifically?
No. That's a constitutional dedicated amount.
But as you know, some people have talked for that being
They have
changed.
talked about that, and if we do that, we have to find a suitable source. You don't want to cheat education to fund transportation.
Right.
I mean, you have to have a quality and an accountable education system. And by the way, those concepts are not mutually exclusive, and that's where the debate's been. Yeah. But there's been diversions throughout the history for the legislature the past 2 or 3 decades. Yeah. Paying for school buses is great. Doing it out of Fund 6 is bad.
You're one of those people who says that we ought to end diversions, have the money go for the purpose for which it was intended.
Absolutely. Right.
But of course, what that does, Commissioner, as you know, is create kind of a pig and a snake problem.
Sure
comes down over here, comes back up over there, and you're creating a hole that has to be filled. I remember when the governor talked in the State of the State about ending the diversion to fund DPS, put the money back where it was originally intended. We're not going to defund DPS.
That's right.
So the amount of money that we're talking about taking away from DPS and putting back toward its original purpose, you're going to have to find that money somewhere. And
that comes with leadership. And that comes with focus on where we need to be.
So is it cutting or adding?
And as Lieutenant Governor, as our economy is healthy and we have excess revenues, which you and I have both been around the same time, you've been a lot longer than me. Let's make that record. In this process and watching it, and watching this process. Yeah. You put those dollars and focus on the fundamentals of what state government is supposed to do. Yeah. And that's how you back channel and backfill those other needs that you would, of placing those monies to build our roads.
So I'm looking at this race and I'm thinking, you got 4 guys who all want to be seen as the most conservative, and that's the nature of the primary process today and the nature of the state. I'm looking for differences substantively with you guys. You're all pro-life, you're all anti-Washington, you're all especially anti-Affordable Care Act, you're all for the water bill, you're all for figuring out how to solve the transportation problem. You may have differences in exactly what the solution is, but you're kind of all for that. You've all supported a reduced number of standardized tests, right?
Absolutely.
You're all for greater choice for parents with kids in low-performing schools. I mean, I'm trying to understand, if I'm a Republican primary voter, how do I decide between or among the 4 of you? You all seem to be effectively saying a version of the same thing. Is it all style differences but not substantive?
Well, I think there's substantive
Tell me a
differences and
substantive
style.
difference. Tell me a difference
Well,
where you
here
come
they
down
are.
different than those
Okay,
guys.
good. Well, There are many, and you just have to look for them, and that's what voters are going to do, and that's what
Okay.
campaigns are about.
Go.
Jerry Patterson and I both went to Texas A&M. He says that he squeezed a 4-year degree into 5. I squeezed it into 3. I mean, those are things that people can look at. Jerry
Knock that one out of the park, Commissioner.
Jerry says that he wants to get a retirement check serving as lieutenant governor. I'm serving as lieutenant governor because I want to work directly for the taxpayers, and I don't think that we should be doing that. So,
Okay,
I mean,
stop.
those are issues.
That actually is an issue of substance.
Okay.
So you disagree with Commissioner Patterson, you disagree with Governor Perry about what is the legal but maybe optically weird decision to both take a salary and take a pension.
I think if you're in an active, as an elected official in
Right.
an active capacity, that should not be an option. I don't think taxpayers have that option at home, and I don't think they expect their elected officials to be handled. So that's the mayor's on Jerry. On David, as I said, David's a nice person. His philosophy is to see how much money you can throw at a problem. Mine is to see what kind of efficiencies and what kind of accountability you can have. I think those are very, very clear issues and very clear differences in approach to solving problems. And we've talked about the issues this last session.
Right.
Dan Patrick, he wants to talk about things that happened in my past. He has filed for bankruptcy, left owing people hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's used a similar amount of money to fund his campaign today. That's a real issue. He has changed his name for political purposes according to the documents that he filed with the courts. That's a real issue. Dan's had a vasectomy on the radio as a publicity stunt.
Not illegal,
As a
I think.
publicity stunt.
Right, yeah.
That indicates that he is a do or say anything type person, and there are differences between us as well. He did vote to drain the rainy day fund this last session, spend everything that was in there at the time. Dan believes that his Second Amendment rights...
Well, let me stop you. It was a 31-0 vote.
But the conservatives in the House stopped that.
Right.
So that's a different... He talks a good game, but there are differences. But because he talks about preserving the rainy day fund in some speeches, but then when you vote to spend it all, that's a difference. That's not very authentic.
But in the case of Senator, it sounds to me like your case against Senator Patrick.
Are you defending Patrick today?
No. But I'm trying to
Are
get
you
you to
here
clarify.
Halloween as Dan Patrick? Is that what we're at?
No, I'm trying to get you to clarify. It sounds to me like on the Dan Patrick case, basically your deal is he's weird, I'm not.
Look, if that's what voters think, hey, look, it's very real that he carried a bill one session and carried a bill in 2011 and carried a bill in 2013 that he accepted an amendment that would have given legislators gun privileges that every Texan will not have. That's offensive to people that care about the Second Amendment to think that because he has a title that he is entitled. In Dan's attack on Ted Cruz on his radio show, he said that he believes that Texas state government should meet in session every year, not every other year like our state constitution says. That is a very real difference in legislative philosophy.
Right.
I do not want to see Texas government meeting every year. That is bad policy because our forefathers had foresight to make certain that we're meeting every other year, causes us to be more frugal, to be more conservative in our forecasts. And that, if you care about state spending, that is a very important issue and a big difference.
Last question before we go to the audience. So you're in this race now with 3 other people. You're all redwoods and not saplings. This is a serious race with 4 serious folks. Can you win this without a runoff?
Look, it depends on the voters of Texas. I'm running every day, working hard, get up early. The same way that I served in the legislature, I'm running for lieutenant governor, and that's the way that I'll serve as lieutenant governor. Yeah. I have supporters all throughout the state. I believe that my support is broader than anyone else's. Yeah. I ended up the first 2-week fundraising period with more cash on hand and more individual voters than anyone else in this race, with no loans to myself like other candidates have, with no debts, no bankruptcies involved, with not owing previous campaign staffers and vendors almost $1 million like David Dewhurst has in his U.S. Senate race. It's just hard to really go out and start a new race when on the heels of something like that, you still owe people that you haven't paid them. Those are very real issues, and I think voters are going to pay attention to it.
All right, Commissioner Staples, we'll stop here. Thank you for being such a good sport about
you.
this stuff. Appreciate having you, Commissioner. Good. Enjoyed it. Questions from the audience?
Sure. Yep.
Great. Okay.